I want you to listen to two stories that illustrate how ancient cultures prized reverence as one of the highest virtues. The first comes from the Pygmy people of the Central African nation of the Congo Republic. Once upon a time, a young boy heard the most beautiful song coming from the forest. The song was so beautiful he had to go and see who was singing, and deep in the forest he found this bird. And he brought it all the way back to the camp to feed it, and this annoyed his father. He didn't want to give any of their food to that bird. But the boy pleaded and pleaded with him, and the bird was fed. The next day, he heard the bird sing again. It sang the most beautiful song. The boy had to go deep into the forest to find it, and again he brought it all the way back home to feed it, and this time the father was even more angered. But once again he gave in, and he fed the bird. The third day, the same thing happened. But this time, the father took the bird from the son, told his son to go away. When his son had left, the father killed the bird with the most beautiful song. And with the bird, he killed the song. And with the song, he killed himself. And he dropped down dead, completely dead, forever. This is what happens when reverence is lacking. But now a second story, which comes from a very different part of the world, Greece. The ancient epic is called the Iliad. It tells the tale of the war between a coalition of Greek city-states and the city of Troy, with Greece ultimately victorious. Our second story is but a small piece of this grand tale, and it has to do with a specific interaction between the Trojan champion Hector and the Greek champion Achilles before they duel. Hector wants to make a deal with Achilles. Hector says, "Whoever kills the other, they will respect tradition and treat the body with kindness and turn it over to his parents for a proper burial." How does Achilles reply? Well, he says, "Does the wolf make bargains with the lamb? I will kill you, and I will leave your body to the dogs and the vultures." Then they fight. Achilles wins, and he treats Hector's body as he said he would. But soon enough, he finds that he cannot go through with it. He can't do that. Memories of his own father start to come upon him, and he imagines what it would have been like if Hector had won and treated his body as he treated Hector's. Achilles remembers his own father, and in remembering this, he feels a shared humanity with Hector. And that is what leads him to do the right thing and to uphold tradition. Reverence here is recovered, but it is a very close call. So, what is this virtue we are talking about this morning? What are these stories trying to say? Well, first, there are things in this world to be humble before and to go in awe of. Birds with the most beautiful song exist. Traditions you never want to violate exist. The transcendent is all of this and more. Things that are ever beyond our reach, and yet we continually strive to chase after, like justice and truth and beauty, or living in peace, building beloved community grounded in covenant. These are transcendent things, larger than us. So are the things that possess power we cannot ultimately control, like nature, like love, like suffering, like death. So are the things that unite human beings in a shared common humanity. Despite the forces of war and greed and fear and ignorance threatening to tear us apart, how we are all heroes in our birth and how we will all die. How everyone is fighting some kind of hard battle in their lives. how we are all people responsible for the choices we make, because that is what freedom entails. Transcendence. It is also in the present moment, in the sense that the present moment is pregnant with unimagined possibility. It does not matter what you may be doing. You could be shoveling snow. But can you shovel with all the mindfulness of the Buddha? Can you shovel like that? There are transcendent things. And there are also transcendent questions, perennial questions people have been asking from the beginnings of human consciousness. And they will always ask, why is there something rather than nothing? Why do bad things happen to good people? What is the meaning of life? Is there a God? What, if anything, happens after a person dies? What the two stories spotlight is the reality of the transcendent. And second of all, they spotlight what is being transcended: human smallness. Why does the Father resent the Son and the bird with the beautiful song anyway? Because he doesn't want to give any food. He doesn't want to share. He's greedy, cheap, or maybe his intentions are better than that. Maybe he wants to make sure that there is enough food to go around for his family and only his family. But as the story suggests, our souls hunger for beauty too. And when beauty dies, it does not matter how much food is in the fridge. It does not matter. We die. We die. Then there is the smallness of Achilles, the smallness in this Greek hero. Caught up in his bloodlust, all that exists for him are wolves and lambs. You are either a wolf or a lamb to him. And when we find ourselves looking upon another like this, and we are convinced that they are all bad and all wrong, and we treat them accordingly, we can be sure our hearts have gotten as small and as grinchy as Achilles' heart. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold for nations and for congregations. Again and again, when we lack reverence, the result is some kind of violence to others, to the world, and to ourselves. But there is yet another kind of smallness that hounds the human condition. It is not so much about greed or war lust or other human failings like this, as it is about fundamental limits. Philosopher Brian McGee tries to articulate this by talking about dogs and their dogness. Say that word with me, dogness. We see, he writes, that each living being is enclosed in a world of possibility that its own nature makes available to it. A dog is enclosed in its dogness, its dogitude, and cannot get outside of that. The cleverest dog that ever existed can do and understand only what it is possible for a dog to do and to understand. I don't want to pick on dogs here, right? I don't want to do that. Let's talk about Anthony Makar-ness. Let's talk about Terran Straussicity. Let's talk about Donald Miltonitude, Bill Kramerosity. Each and every one of us is enclosed in our own form of dogitude, our small world of possibility, defined by the limitations of our personal genetics, our personal histories and experiences, also the stories that we tell about ourselves and who we are. Our small worlds, they enable us to have life, but the lives are puny compared to all that is possible, all that is life with a capital L. The human situation, says Brian McGee, is as if we were given some, but not all, of the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle and left to make a complete picture of them. Whatever we ended up with could not be the true picture. I want you to look at the person right beside you. No, really, I really would like you to do that. Your experience of them comes to you through your particular special version of dogness, right? And it results in you never possessing all the puzzle pieces of that person sitting beside you. I don't care if you've known them for 50 years. You will never have all the puzzle pieces. And now I want you to hold up the mirror to yourself. Same thing again. Your version of dogness directed inwards in pursuit of self-knowledge limits things profoundly. You will never get to all the puzzle pieces of yourself, even though you are the nearest thing to yourself in all this world. I'm reminded of something that a person I know likes to say about herself, likes to say it a lot. She's suffered in her life. She has suffered a tremendous amount. Her mother tried to commit suicide, and in that moment she walked in on her mother. And then she cleaned up afterwards, and then she stayed and took care of her mother. That happened to her. Her daughter was murdered by the daughter's husband. That happened to her. She has suffered tremendously in her life. And so she likes to say this. She likes to say, I must have been Attila the Hun in a past life. That's how she's putting together the puzzle pieces of her life to help her understand why she is suffering so much in her world. She deserves it, in other words. You see what that message is to her? She's saying she deserves it. And I called her on this, and she laughed. She denied that she was trying to explain anything. And besides, she didn't believe in reincarnation, right? I said, well, fine, but your story is still casting a curse upon you. It still is. What if you just told a different story that perhaps is not true, but is kinder? Namely, what about this? You chose to suffer all these horrible things in this life because you wanted to fast track your evolution as a compassionate and loving being. There is no faster track into compassion and lovingness than of having suffered a lot and know what that is like. And to know what that is like. What about this story? I asked her. Nope. Didn't matter that both stories were equally playful and equally untrue, perhaps, but didn't matter. She resisted. She wanted to stay with the negativity towards herself. She was not sufficiently in awe of the mystery of her life and of her suffering. We must make space for awe, which means backing the heck up from thinking we know, backing the heck up from feeling guilty until proven innocent. Irreverence for Anthony Makar is to pretend that Anthony Makarness is the route to complete knowledge and certitude. Reverence for Anthony Makar is to honor the parts of the puzzle that I do have that are in hand, but also to honor the gaps, to be in awe of the mystery of his life, to stay curious, because every moment the mystery unfolds. And you too, in your Terence Straussness and your Donald Miltonitude, Bill Kramerosity, and every one of us in this space. You too. And now we move into the last part of my message today. So far we have explored what reverence is and what a lack of reverence leads to. And I hope you see why ancient cultures prized reverence so highly and why they feared its absence. They feared it. So should we. We should fear the absence of reverence. And so the practical question becomes, how can we be more reverential in our lives here and now? And there's lots to say. I just want to hone in on one thing which I think will pay off profoundly. It is a certain Buddhist spiritual practice. It is called Tonglen, Tonglen, Tonglen. Tonglen is when you take on the suffering of someone who is hurting and you wish to help. You might not even like this person. You might not like what they stand for. Maybe they're all for moving this congregation to Kensington and you think that's crazy. Or maybe you are all for Kensington and the people who aren't, you think they're nuts. But you will take on the other person's anxiety and anger and fear because you have reverence towards our shared human condition of vulnerability in the face of change and of sadness in the face of loss. You have reverence towards that. And so you take on the suffering of the person bugging you. You breathe in the wish to take away the anger and the anxiety and the fear. And then as you breathe out, you send that person happiness or joy or whatever it is that might relieve them of their pain. This is the core of the practice, says Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron. Breathing in the other's pain so that they can be well and have more space to relax and open, and then breathing out, sending them relaxation or whatever you feel would bring them relief and happiness. It is a scary time of change. A lot is happening. A lot is happening. But the center can absolutely hold. When we go in awe of something that transcends our personal emotions, the center can hold when we go in awe of our promises to treat each other kindly despite our differences. Why else do we come together as a spiritual community anyhow? Because we go in awe of the possibility and the power of beloved community. Practice Tonglen for each other, especially people who share a different point of view that is really, really bugging you. But Pema Chodron is clear that often this is very hard to do. She says, we often cannot do Tonglen because we come face to face with our own fear, our own resistance or anger or whatever our personal pain, our personal stuckness happens to be at that moment. So this is what she recommends. She says, at that point, you can change the focus and to begin to do Tonglen for what you are feeling, and for the millions of others who are feeling the exact same way you are too, in the same moment. Maybe you're able to name your pain, she says. You recognize it clearly as terror or revulsion or anger or wanting to get revenge. So, you breathe in for all the people in the world who are feeling the emotion you are feeling. You breathe in for them, and then you breathe out for them till you breathe out relief, or whatever's going to open things up for them. And for you too, breathe in, breathe out. Right now, I want you to summon up a hard feeling. I want you to summon up the feelings of a father who kills the bird with the most beautiful song. Summon up the feelings of the terrible Achilles, who divides the world into wolves and lambs. Summon up the feeling of the woman who said she must have been Attila the Hun in a past life. Breathe in for all the people in this world caught up in these same feelings. Your heart is big enough for this. And then breathe out kindness and relief to everyone and to yourself. You are not alone. Despite the intensity of the pain, whatever your version of dogness happens to be, which makes you feel like you live on your own island in isolation from all, no, humanity is with you. There is no island. There is only endless common ground. Go in awe of that. Some people, they say that your mind can be so open your brains fall out. But I pray that it can be so open that something transcendent and worthy of awe falls in. I pray that for all of us today. Amen.